morning, everybody, and it's a real pleasure to join you all here today. And I'd like to begin by welcoming you all to London for the start of your visit to the UK. And I have to say, having had a chat with many of you and met a few of you over breakfast, I'm incredibly impressed by the array and the depth and the experience of people we've got here. So a huge personal thank you for making the effort to be here. And I encourage you to share with us the many opportunities emerging in your countries, so we can join you in embracing them, particularly in developing the renewable energy capabilities that are critical to growth. Africa boasts some of the greatest green energy potential anywhere on Earth. So we must take this opportunity to deepen and diversify the bonds that exist between us across these green industries, listening and learning from our shared experiences. Working side by side, we can harness the fantastic opportunities that lie ahead and decarbonise our economies faster, building a greener, more resilient and more prosperous future for Africa, the UK and for our planet.
To introduce the first session, we have a panel session where we are going to hear from the ministers about their country. We have three distinguished guests on this first occasion.
I'm here today representing Infrastructure Exports UK, and IE UK's mission is to export the best of British and to support places outside of the UK in their own missions as set out by Minister Huddleston. This session, we've got about 40 minutes to discuss infrastructure, to discuss the way we can create development, but all in a kind of sustainable context and on a pathway to net zero. So I'll invite the ministers to speak about their topic and we'll explore on how we can share and learn from each other how we might generate sustainable development and develop net zero pathways. So let's get stuck into it. Perhaps if I could just ask you to introduce yourself and then just open up by start talking about your own plans for decarbonisation, your particular parts of the industries, and then we'll just take it from there. So if I could invite you to kick off, please.
So thank you very much, and thank you for having me, and thank you for this extraordinary audience. My name is Samuel Jinapor. I'm the minister responsible for lands and natural resources in Ghana. And in simple terms, I'm responsible for the management, exploitation of our mineral resources. As you know, Ghana is a big mining country. We are the leading producer of gold in Africa and responsible for lands and forestry. And the government of Ghana has structured that ministry in a manner because of the linkages between mining, forestry, and land. So yes. So that is what I do, and I'm a member of parliament, first-time member of parliament for the constituency of Damango in the northern part of our country. I think that can be enough, shouldn't it? and on the particular issue of industrial decarbonisation, and let me use the opportunity to commend the UK government for putting this Ministerial Roadshow together, and also for taking up such a bold leadership role in terms of the global effort at halting climate change and getting to net zero. I mean, I, for instance, know that the United Kingdom is one of the first countries to legislate for net zero, and also one of the countries to have put in place industrial decarbonisation strategy, and I think all of those are good. I worked with a couple of other ministers in the UK government to launch some of the momentous initiatives for climate change. The Glasgow Leaders' Declaration on Forest and Land Use, which was outdoored in Glasgow, the Forest and Climate Leaders' Partnership, which was launched in Sharm el-Sheikh by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and President Akufo-Addo. These are all very momentous steps, and I think that we should commend the UK for that. Now, in the mining sector, I mean in Ghana, it's a very important sector if we have to get to net zero. I mean, for very good reasons. And Even though Africa contributes 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, Ghana, for example, contributes 0.04%. And we are very familiar with the industrial revolutions of the 18th and 19th century, the burning of coal, which has brought us where we are. Nonetheless, Ghana is fully committed to industrial decarbonization. And specifically in the area of mining, we have taken the view, and the policy we are implementing has said that we need to mine. I mean, we need to exploit our natural resources for our development. Middle income country, a population of 30 million plus, a very strong, youthful country, and therefore the need for economic growth, the need to unleash prosperity to our people is key. And exploiting our natural resources is important. So that is one leg of it. But we also take the view that we can do so sustainably. And therefore, we've put in place a gamut of measures to make the Ghanaian mining sector environmentally sound and friendly. And the environmental, social, and governance principles are those we adhere to strongly. So we are, for example, insisting on concurrent reclamation and revegetation after mining in the artisanal small-scale mining sector. We are, for example, working very closely with the Ministry of Energy to ensure that the mining operations, the large-scale mining operations, are done sustainably. We are putting in place measures to ensure that these critical green minerals, lithium and the rest, are exploited in a manner which is sustainable. And as I speak to you, there's a policy before the government, before the cabinet, which is aimed at arriving at that conclusion. Of course, in conclusion, the other part of the equation, which is power generation, which is the energy sector and so on and so forth. And thankfully, we have a very distinguished minister who will be speaking very soon, who is leading some of the most ambitious transformational policies in that sector to ensure that we have a sustainable energy system. So yes, what we are doing in Ghana is recognizing that industrial decarbonization is very important. We are told, for example, by the International Energy Agency, IEA, that the sector contributes almost some 9 gigatons of emissions, and a third of it, with the exception of power generation, that is about the other sector which contributes significantly. So we are fully committed. We are putting in place all the measures and implementing them to ensure that the mining sector of Ghana is sustainable. Yes.
Excellent. Good introduction. Thank you very much. And good to hear about the balance between development and actually needing to do that sustainability. Ethiopia, Mr. Engineer.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Romano. So you're all clearly doing things to try and balance development and doing that in a sustainable way. What would you say, perhaps let's come back down this way, we'll start again with you, Mr. Romano, and come back down this way. What would you say were the key kind of learning points in where you've got to today that you could perhaps share with the other ministers in the room? What have you learnt from your journey so far?
Maybe I will be talking mainly of the challenges for us to be able to shift.
Anything to add to that, Mr. Jinapor?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I think in Ghana, we have updated our nationally determined contributions, and that is meant that we have a host of mitigation and adaptation measures which we aim by 2030 to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by some 64 million tons of CO2. And so that is our goal, and everything we are putting together, the energy sector, the transport sector, the mining sector, the manufacturing sector, all of that is to come to be part of the components of this jigsaw, which will give us the necessary push to be able to achieve this objective. But your question, what are the lessons? I'll structure it in 2 parts. Domestic lessons and, if you want, international ones. Mm-hmm. Domestic lessons is that conundrum, that big, almost elusive objective, policy objective of striking the balance between exploiting your natural resources but at the same time adhering to the highest standards of ESGs. For me, I think that is the most important. I'll give you a classic example. Ghana is, since independence, we've had large deposits of bauxite. We've not exploited them. Our president came into office in 2017 and took that bold decision that we're going to build or we're going to construct an integrated aluminum industry in Ghana. And as you know, without that, you cannot industrialize. Okay, so the president set out through an act of parliament to establish what we call the Ghana Integrated Aluminum Development Corporation, GIADEC, which is the corporation responsible for constructing this integrated aluminum industry under my ministry. And the thinking is we are able to do that, and we're also able to do iron and steel. Then these become the two components for our industry, for automobile industry, for aeroplane industry, and so on and so forth. And now we have a forest, a famous forest reserve, which is not in the league of the Amazons or the Congo Basin and the rest, but significant, called Etiwa Forest. And the Etiwa Forest is host to some of the large resources we are about to exploit. So how do you strike the balance of maintaining the integrity of this forest reserve, which is a carbon sink, at the same time exploiting these bauxite resources, which is needed for industrialization. The industrialization is also needed for unleashing prosperity for the mass of our people, as Europe has done through the industrial revolution of the 18th and 19th century. And so that is a key matter. And I've said it on many platforms that when we talk about industrial decarbonization and when we talk about climate action, we need to situate it in its proper context, its historical context, its contemporary context, and where we're taking it to, particularly the peculiarity of the African situation. I think it's absolutely important. So that is the lesson I would say when it comes to the issue of Ghana in the domestic sense. But on the international stage, three matters. The first one, in my view, is technology transfer, having the smart, effective, sustainable technology, which is available to countries like Ghana, but not only available to countries like Ghana, but available on fair basis, and so that you don't have all kinds of risk premiums for acquiring some of these technological interventions which will enable us industrialize, but do so sustainably. The second one is the carbon market. I think that the world, the international community, should really pay attention to developing this carbon market and having carbon trading become transparent, become inclusive, become fair, so that countries like Ghana can participate in the carbon market and the carbon trading to raise the necessary funding to be able to spearhead and implement some of the policies which will result in significant industrial decarbonization. And thirdly, and finally, I should say, is, and I'm sure all of us here are very familiar with this, which is the phenomenon of, with respect, but if you allow me to be blunt, a lot of talk but little action, on the global stage. And I've been on these platforms since I became minister. And really, let's face it, the climate issue, industrial decarbonization, net zero, getting to 1.5 degrees, and all the ambitious objectives we set for ourselves. In many cases, a lot of talk, and action is little. And I give you the classic example, Copenhagen, 2015, when the categorical commitment was made of providing $100 billion for developing countries for mitigation and adaptation policy measures. Up to date, it's not happened. I talked about FCLP, the Forest and Climate Leadership Partnership. I have the privilege to co-chair with Secretary John Kerry. It's very ambitious, very momentous step, but to what extent are we going to back all these initiatives, to back all these commitments, and to back all this talk with action? I think it's a big lesson, not just for Ghana or for my friend from Ethiopia or Mauritius or Africa, but for the global community to come to grips with this. And that, if we really are determined and we are committed to this industrial decarbonization and climate action, we need to put our money where our mouths are. Yeah, I have no doubt.
A little less conversation, a little more action, Mr. Jinapor. Yeah, indeed. And to stick with that theme of kind of technology transfer, kind of what role do you think skills development. I think it's a challenge we're all facing, developing the necessary skills for a kind of future-facing economy. So how do you build scale but retain those skills within your country?
Well, so let me give you one very basic example and to let you get us appreciate this point I make. In Ghana, the mining sector is structured in two parts. You have the large-scale mining sector, and then you have the small-scale artisanal mining sector. As minister responsible for mining, my biggest headache, and my colleagues from Ghana will attest to that, my biggest headache is small-scale mining. Small-scale mining is causing a lot of havoc in Ghana. It's literally destroying our country. Our river bodies are being polluted, our landscapes are being degraded, our forest reserves are being depleted, and it's such a huge, complicated matter, struggling to deal with it. Now, one intervention which can make a lot of difference in respect of skills training is how to get these small-scale miners to extract the gold from the ore in a sustainable way. As it is now, unfortunately, a good number of them extract the gold from the ore by using mercury. And by that, you know the implications, the Minamata Convention and all the implications it has for the environment and CO2 emissions. So we are implementing policies to ensure that we train them, we get them to be able to extract the ore without using mercury. So we are bringing mercury-free gold processing machines, which will get them to extract the ore in a manner without using mercury whatsoever. So yes, you are right. Skills training is absolutely important. But at the end of the day, it comes back to the issue of having the requisite financial muscle to prosecute and push these plans through.
Thank you. Anything else on skills that worth mentioning, Mr. Habtamu or Mr. Romani? I think it's a key challenge that we're facing in the UK is how you develop these future-facing skills.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Just to add on to what my brother said, these are the challenges which are pertinent to, African countries in particular.
Turning to you, Mr. Romani, you mentioned doing things together. I think you've all mentioned the role of engagement with people, with the public. So how do you harness the value of the citizen? How do you put people at the heart of what needs to happen in Mauritius? But perhaps what are you learning from that? The need to put people at the heart of this journey.
And for us to have the transition for a proper future.
Mm-hmm. Anything else to add on putting people at the heart of this transition?
I think it's important to also recognize that it's not all that gloomy. I mean, a lot of positive things are happening, and this conversation itself is very positive. The United Kingdom, I should say, is showing extraordinary leadership. This whole concept of being the first developed country to legislate towards net zero, I think it's very momentous, and have a strategy to be able to achieve that. The climate conversation today, I think we all agree, is perhaps the most topical one in the world. Itself is positive. And the issue of industrial decarbonization may be a little more technical and very much restricted to the experts. But that, the population, and by that I mean the global population and the Ghanaian population, are awake to the adverse consequences of climate change. That I think there's no question about it. The man on the streets seems to now begin to accept that climate change is real, and people are getting involved. I mean, and particularly exciting is the young people. The young people are very much involved and very much interested. I mean, for example, in Ghana, just like Ethiopia, we got the inspiration from our friends from Ethiopia. We have a day in Ghana we call Green Ghana Day, which is the day the president leads the whole nation to plant trees. And as we speak today, in the 3 editions of the Green Ghana Day, we've planted 40 million trees. I mean, it may look insignificant given what Ethiopia, given what Ethiopia has done, but you have to start from somewhere. But what is the point I make out of that initiative? The level of enthusiasm in Ghana towards that particular day. and how people come out and people contribute their time and energies and resources to making it successful is, for me, the real answer to how involved are people. People are truly involved and people are interested. Yeah.
So we're running out of time, and let's finish on a note of enthusiasm and engagement. And thank you, gentlemen, very much for your thoughts. I think I certainly learnt a lot during that. And if I could ask you to thank the ministers, please.